Hi, it's Christine Daigle.
I'm Jena Brown.
Kevin Tumlinson.
And I'm JD Barker. Welcome to Writers Inc. So I am trying to get over jet lag. So I was at a conference out in Bellingham, Washington, which is way up in the corner, basically right before you get to Canada and turn around because nobody wants to go to Canada. Um, just messing with you. But like I was out there,
It's
like
funny
obviously
because it's true.
that time difference always kills me. Like I would rather go to Europe and get slapped with, like 6, 7, 8 hours time difference. But like the 3 hours is always brutal because I'm, like they keep me up super late and then I wake up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, ready to start the day. And I was there just long enough to get completely used to it and then have to turn around and head east and basically have 3 hours chopped off of my day. So I am still trying to get back to normal. So
Yeah,
I will
Yeah.
probably ramble nonstop through this episode.
yeah. No, that happened to me when I was in LA last year, and I was like, let's just stay on the early schedule because I'm not a morning person. And like 6 o'clock is 9 o'clock our time, and we'll just stay on it. But we were there 10 days, and that's what happened. Just slowly creeps
Yeah.
until I'm
Well,
getting up
norm
at 10 o'clock again, and then I'm all thrown off.
I would if I had any control over it, but like they had me like I did 5 hour long presentations.
Ugh.
Then I had to do a keynote speech, and then I had to talk for like a half hour at lunch. So like they kind of ran me ragged, and then they have an award ceremony, and like that went until crazy late. It went till like 12:45 or something silly. So like there was no staying up. But I wanted to give a shout out to Village Books out in Bellingham. Like I see a lot of bookstores. I sit at a lot of little tables in the corner of a bookstore with my books piled on them, signing stuff for people. Every once in a while you step into a store where they've got like everything dialed in and you can just tell like this is why this store has been around forever. Like Village Books is like
Yeah.
it's got the perfect layout. It's got a little cafe going, just the right amount of seating. Location couldn't be better. Like they're getting foot traffic right off the street and it like literally busy, like all hours of the day. I was there for like I think 8 hours. I think we started at 11 in the morning. We ended like around 4 or 5 or something. But yeah, so like that is so refreshing to see. So if Village Books, if you're listening, you need to franchise that and start rolling these guys out in other parts of the country.
It would just get ruined if they franchised it. We need
Yeah.
these little solo one-off gyms out there. I haven't found anything like that in the Austin area yet. There's a couple of decent bookstores, but I haven't found like that secret, like beautiful bookstore yet. I haven't found it here. Still
Yeah,
looking.
Well,
You can
start it.
always tell. Like I've got Tom recently closed River Run Books here in Portsmouth, and Tom is one of
Yeah.
those guys. Like he powered through COVID. Like he had that store open for 20 some years, in various locations throughout Portsmouth, and you always knew why. Like you could just tell that he hustled. He just understood exactly what everybody wanted. He made sure he delivered on everything. And it sounds like the women who bought the store from him are basically in the same vein. Like they're already reaching out. Like they've been posting pictures of the renovation they're doing. Like they are all over it. And Portsmouth is a tourist town, so we've got I think 3 or 4 other bookstores. They come and go constantly in town. Like River Run was always the staple, and then you have 3 or 4 that are this one's open for 6 months, this one's open for a year. Yeah, another one just opened, and like I can just sort of tell, like it takes them 2 weeks to respond on an email. Nobody's talking about them. I haven't seen anything on social media, and this is like
Yeah.
before they really get started. So you just kind of know where it's heading, and like I really wish the ones that were just starting off would take a cue from the ones that have been around forever.
Yeah.
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 All
Oh,
right.
All right,
Well, should
that's
we
me
get to
rambling
the
because I'm tired.
that's
Yeah.
okay. Well, we want you to ramble some more because we've got some listener questions, right?
We do.
Oh, we do. Okay.
Yeah.
First one, and I think they're all for you, JD.
Yeah.
Well,
As all
that's
listener
not fair.
questions are. I don't understand. When you do advanced reader copies, do you send paperbacks or hardcover? I'm just imagining the cost.
So I do paperbacks. I either print them through Lulu or I'll just send right from Amazon, because they stamp not for resale or whatever right across the top and they'll ship pretty much anywhere.
Yeah.
So from a cost standpoint, I think the last one I did, I think it was like 572 if I remember right for the book, and then a couple dollars for shipping. So everything was usually around $10, $11 for each
Yeah.
one. I haven't tried doing a hardcover yet, and not because I wouldn't want to, but like I usually get the hardcovers at the very last minute, for everything,
Yeah.
usually right before publication. So there's no time to, like most people want to see an ARC copy 3, 4 months before publication if you really want to get it, get it reviewed.
Yeah.
Most of the arcs I get come to me as hardcover from the various PR agencies. I rarely get I get paperbacks, but most of them are hardcover. But when
Yeah.
I do it,
are
I
you getting them?
send ebooks.
Are you getting them after they release? Like the hardcover is coming to you after the book
Oh,
is
that's a
out?
good question. No, not always. No, it's not, a lot of times I get like a truly advanced copy. Yeah, no, not. Sometimes I get them after they release, but a lot of times I get them, months
Yeah, I
before.
know. I have noticed it does depend on the publisher, and sometimes they'll send you the ARC, and sometimes they'll send you a finished copy, but typically the finished copies, at least from the big publishers, come like within a month of release. So you might get it a little early, but not as early as
Yeah.
the ARC typically comes.
My favorite is when they send it to you and I get it like the day before the interview and I'm supposed to have read this thing and
Yeah.
Well, some of them are
So,
really good at it. Like I posted pictures for the ARCs that went out for the writer, and like I still haven't gotten one of these, but they went out with, they were in like gift bags and like all,
Yeah.
yeah.
super fancy. And like I haven't even seen one of those. And like when I get Dean Koontz's ARCs, he's with Thomas and Mercer. They actually come as a, in a slipcase. It's a paperback book, but it's in a, a
Nice.
hardcover slipcase kind of thing, which is crazy fancy. Mine are just paperbacks.
Yeah. I do ebooks. Everybody gets an ebook. That's because I'm cheap.
You get an ebook. You get an ebook. You get an ebook.
Yeah. My street team is several hundred people though. So they're all getting arcs. I don't want to spend that kind of money. So that's me. The next question's again for JD. You always talk about your unique marketing angles, and I have a question about your most current one, spending the night on the island. How do you translate that into actual sales? I've got a murder mystery coming out based on an Alzheimer's patient's recollection of a memory, and I don't think spending a weekend at the nursing home would be great incentive for anybody.
You never know.
I would
Yeah, you
I
never know.
would totally do that. I
Lime
spent a
Jello.
lot of time. I spent a lot of time in nursing homes just talking to the people that are there. Like they are fascinating and they always have crazy stories. Like I was at the award ceremony for the conference I was just at, and one of the guys sitting at the table, he's 101 years old, and like
Yeah.
very sharp as a tack. That's how you get to 101 years old. And like he was giving me all these World War II stories that are just incredible to hear. So yeah, nursing homes aren't bad. I have no idea if this is going to translate into sales. I mean, what it is translating into is word of mouth. Like if you go on
Yeah.
Facebook, I've got ads running for the contest. I've got ads running for the book. And people are just talking about the contest. Like, would you do it? I won't do it. I'll do it if you do it. Maybe we should both
Right.
do it. So like that chatter, causes people to go do what, and then they start looking at it, and it spreads that way. So, it's like anything else. You can't measure it, and I don't think they've ever been able to in advertising. That's always kind of the big joke. They just keep throwing money at it, but it works better than a Facebook ad for sure.
I think that for this Alzheimer's murder mystery thing, they should do a kind of. Did you ever see the film Memento? Did
Mhm.
you ever see
Oh yeah.
that?
Mhm.
Okay, so you know how it's a non-linear story, but like you get it's revealed in reverse. So like because he has no memory, right? So what if you did something similar, almost like a scavenger hunt kind of thing? Like they're getting all the clues in reverse, you know. Like
Hmm.
maybe they even find out who the murderer is up front, but now it's about putting together it's the who done it in reverse kind of thing. I think that could be fun. Take some imagination, but you could do that. You don't have to go to a nursing home or whatever. I mean, it doesn't have to.
I've thought about doing a virtual scavenger hunt.
Yeah.
Something that people could somehow play along with either online or do in person, but they find it online. Yeah, there's always an angle.
I just
Yeah.
watched this documentary on Netflix about the guy who hid like a,
Forrest
a
Fenn. I'm
treasure
watching it
chest.
right now, Kevin.
Oh yeah. Okay, I won't spoil it. I
What?
won't spoil it. But
Don't spoil it. Forrest Fenn, he buried like a treasure box with gold and jewels in
yeah.
it. We're somewhere between 1 and 5 million.
Yeah. But you should watch it
It's
because it's
wild.
it's as much a cautionary tale as it is,
Lots
because
of
like
unintended consequences and
I
people.
could see the Netflix series based on what JD's doing on this island coming up
Oh,
soon. So,
Yeah, I
there were
honestly, I
deaths.
need to talk
That's
to
all.
I need to talk to somebody about that because it's come up a bunch of times. Like I need to film like every aspect of this, and I haven't been. Just because that is a whole documentary on top of the book, and like it's easy enough to do.
yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody keeps reminding me of this, and I still haven't pulled the trigger on hiring somebody to actually document it.
Hmm. Hmm. Oh, we
Kevin, are
knew
you
someone
available?
with a
Where's
television
Alex?
background.
Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah, Alex. Alex
All right,
got the whole
Alex.
thing.
Yeah,
All
Alex,
right.
call me.
This is the last question. Other than your database and NetGalley, do you have any other sources for acquiring advanced reader copies? And are you worried about your book being copied?
Those are the two places I tend to rely on. So I cultivate the new people through NetGalley. After a NetGalley promotion ends, I add everybody from that list to my original mailing list, and then it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. I
Yeah,
haven't tried to go anywhere else for it, and no, I'm not worried about the book being copied because it's no different. All the pirating stuff, the people that do it aren't going to buy the book anyway, and
right.
again, it just creates more word of mouth.
I use Book Funnel for the ebook version of this, and one of the things that Damon's built into that is it puts like a digital watermark, so they have to enter an email address in order to download the book, and I can tell it to only give it to an approved list. So, they can only download it if they're on that particular mailing list. But then if it does get pirated out there, you can basically look at it, look at the metadata for it and everything, and just discover who shared it. Actually, I think it actually puts an email address at the top of the page for each page or something. I don't remember, but it'll watermark it so that they can't just randomly go share it. So,
They do that with film stuff too. And I remember, I
yeah,
guess about 2, 3 years ago, Dan Brown he did like a film premiere here locally for his TV show for oh God, Lost
Robert
Symbol.
Langdon. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
Lost Symbol. So he played it off his own Mac because he basically had the first episode the studio sent him, but they did the exact same thing. They watermarked it with his email address. So his personal email address was basically on the screen for the entire showing, in front
Yeah.
of all of these people. So I'm pretty sure Dan had to change his email address.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, that is a downside, I guess. All right. Do we
Yeah.
want to jump into news?
Yes.
Mhm.
What is in the
Action.
news?
Inside Inkitt, Inkitt uses AI for various aspects of their publishing process, including story development, cover design, audiobook narration, and advertisement. The platform also envisions expanding AI use to create fully AI generated intellectual properties, potentially including AI personas as authors. Authors can initially upload their stories for free on Inkitt, and popular stories may move to the paid service. And I'm going to take a stab at this. Galatia, which involves broader rights retention by the company for creating sequels, spin-offs, and other derivative works. Inkitt's model does not offer advances to authors and pays out 6% of the net sales and royalties. Despite substantial monthly sales, Inkitt operates at a loss, largely due to the high costs of its TV operations. CEO Ali sorry, CEO Ali Albazaz, sorry about that, acknowledges the challenges of selling AI generated content directly to consumers, suggesting that disguising AI involvement may be necessary for market acceptance. Inkitt used to have an quote author relations employee. She departed in November, writing to the company, "I leave you with the friendly words to never forget that authors are the reason we're here."
yeah.
This whole
How
thing makes me
contentious.
cringe. Why are we
Yeah.
even talking about it?
The various
You know,
communities I'm in, people are losing their mind over this. So I'm like, oh, we might as well talk about it. Disguising AI work as human work. Pass it
Yeah.
off.
well, and pointing out he feels he needs to do that in order to become profitable.
Yeah.
You know what this honestly why this frightens me. So Disney's got a ton of book IP that they own. They've got series. They hire authors all the time as ghostwriters to basically write in their IP. About 10 or 15 years ago, they started trademarking author names. So they would come up with some fictitious name that would be the author on the cover of these ghost written books, and then they would hire authors to write those books. So it wasn't under the ghostwriter's name; it was under this fake name that Disney owned,
Yeah.
Right.
because they basically don't want any entanglement between themselves and the other people. Like I could see them adopting this model very easily if it gets to the point where it does get accepted. And a company like Disney could find a way to make it profitable, which is pretty frightening because this is not far from their current model, other
Yeah.
than the fact that this guy's trying to use AI for every place he possibly can.
That is
Yeah.
what makes it sticky, is that this is kind of a practice that's been around for a while, that there is a virtual author, basically. They did, I don't know if you guys remember I Am Number Four. That was
Mhm.
that was a virtual author. They had ghostwriters writing under that pen name.
Mhm.
So, and they never got credit.
Yeah, I mean, a couple famous ones like I had the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew mysteries, and I've had those since I was a kid, and it's the same deal. They've got one name on each cover, but it's just
Yeah.
different writers, but they just put the same name on them.
Yeah.
VC Andrews has been dead forever, but she still has one or two books coming out a year. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing that I thought was interesting about this is that Inkitt had some big investors in it from CEOs, ex-CEOs from HarperCollins and Penguin before the AI stuff came on board.
Hmm.
So I'm just like, I don't think they're too happy about that. But
I mean, what they're basically saying is like, in a year, Agatha Christie might put out a new book, and we might see her on the Today Show doing an interview.
Yeah.
yeah,
I
and they're
mean,
like, you put your
Crazy.
work up for free. If we like it, we'll put it over to Galatia and take all your rights for 6%. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
no, no, thank you.
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Well,
6%. All right.
Yeah,
hopefully in 6 months we're doing another story about the failure of this entire
there
idea.
you go.
Publishers Weekly is now charging for review submissions. Beginning March 24th, 2025, Publishers Weekly now charges $25 for every book submitted for PW review consideration. Book publishers who are PW site licensed subscribers do not pay the per submission fee. Site licenses are available at any book publisher and pricing starts at $950. Anyone within or working on behalf of a book publisher with a site license can submit a title for review consideration without paying the $25 fee.
Yeah.
Can we blame Jenna for this? Because this
I
seems as
can.
it started right after
I
she got
do.
hired there.
Well,
Yeah,
I get
actually
it.
do blame
Like,
her.
That was my idea. I
Yeah.
wasn't going to say anything, but yeah, I was like,
Good
hey,
job, Jenna.
guys, I think
Why
we
aren't
should
you
be
charging?
charging for this.
Well,
I
the
get
kicker
it,
here is
but
it says $25 for consideration. They're not saying that they're going to
Yeah.
review your book.
correct.
That's
It's
just end
not
up getting a
guaranteeing a
slush
review.
pile.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, because, now you're pay to play. Now you're just, paying for the privilege of possibly
Yeah.
being reviewed.
Well, I get
Yeah,
it
that's a
because
hard
I know
no.
that they're flooded with people who want the reviews. So I think, it's a little bit of a way of reducing those submission numbers. They already require 2 physical copies. So
Mhm.
I think
Doesn't
this is
Kirkus charge indie?
Yeah. They charge
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
yeah.
So, I
And so
mean,
yeah, I think
But
Library
here's the
Journal
thing.
does not, New York Times does not. But if they all start charging, then this gets pretty pricey to try and get a
But
review.
it's the
the New York
fact that they're
Times
charging
likely
for
wouldn't.
mere consideration. That's the
Yeah.
part that irks me because who's to say? Like they may give it no glance whatsoever, right? Because it's still a slush pile, even if they're being paid for it. So you send in your book and you
But
pay your
that's
$25. There is no guarantee, there's no checks and balances to guarantee that they actually look at it
Yeah.
and send it to Jenna.
I mean, that is the review game, though. I mean,
But
like,
at least before it didn't cost me anything.
well, that's true, but I think, I don't know. I mean, it could just be that they don't have the capacity to deal with as much indie as, and so I think the priority always went to the big 5 publishers.
Yeah.
If
I
I'm
think though that the
100%
key to
honest.
this,
Yeah.
they're going to have to offer. I don't know. I feel that they should offer. They're not going to have to. They can do whatever they want. But I feel like the best outcome of this would be, I paid the $25. At least give me some kind of feedback, even if it's just we weren't interested in this book because of these. The cover was crappy or we found a typo on page 1 or whatever. Like what was the thing that eliminated it? And that's what I want to see. If I'm going to pay you something, I want something in
Yeah.
return.
I think that's hard though, right? Because reviewers are busy and they're just going to pick what speaks to them.
Well,
I don't,
Publishers Weekly, we don't pick.
Oh,
We
you
don't
don't pick. You get them.
We are assigned them, so
Okay.
the editor picks.
The
And I
editor
don't
takes
have
what
any
speaks to them.
yeah, like what that process is.
Yeah.
I've only had 2.
But yeah, I think you're right about the indie thing because $9.50 for a site license to a big publisher is nothing, and they can send
Right.
all the books they want. But for an indie, that's a lot of money. So I think
Yeah.
it will.
Publishers
reduce
Weekly
those
doesn't,
submissions.
they don't review indies, right? They shuffle them over to Book Life, which is a division of Publishers Weekly, but it's not the same thing.
That's
So
true.
the Publisher Weekly
Yeah.
reviews end up in the Publishers Weekly, magazine and the catalog. And
So
Well, so
maybe
who's
that's
paying this
too-
$25 then?
anyone who doesn't
I,
have a site license.
yeah, I mean, what it's not telling you is, are they charging it for Book Life and charging it for Publishers Weekly?
Yeah.
I know you have to be traditionally published in order to get into Publishers Weekly to do the at $25.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right.
I don't know. There you go.
More sketchy stuff.
Sorry.
Does sound sketchy to me. But,
All right.
yeah. I think that's going to be it for today. Hey, this is Kevin Tumlinson, and it seems to me like you might need a little help. Maybe hand off all that stuff that's keeping you from writing. At Author Anchor, we connect authors with skilled, affordable virtual assistants trained specifically for the publishing world. Your personal VA handles everything from book production to marketing and social media, freeing you up to focus on what matters most, your writing. Book a discovery call today and we'll find that perfect VA for you. Plus, mention the Writers Inc. podcast and you'll get $50 off your first month. Visit authoranchor.com and get matched with your personal VA so you can just write.
Beautiful. JD, who's up this week?
This week we've got Alan Lastufka coming on. Alan's an award-winning author and musician from Oregon, known for his horror and magical realism tales. His debut novel, Face the Night, won the 2022 Hoffer Award. He's also the founder of Shortwave Publishing and co-founder of DFTBA Records. Here he is, Alan Lastufka.
Well, thanks so much for chatting with us today. I'm really excited to have you.
Thanks. Excited to be here.
Yeah, well, you have quite the career. You've done writing, publishing as a publisher, some artwork, a little dabbled in some film. But let's start at the beginning, kind of rewind and talk about your writing first. How did you get started writing? What is your origin story?
Sure. Well, I wrote a lot as a kid, a lot of short stories, tried a novel or two, but this is back when I was way too young to have tried a novel.
Right.
And over the years, that kind of fell off after high school. I got into graphic design at that point. I had started learning and playing music at that point. And so writing just kind of simmered in the background. But I had a few ideas that I always really wanted to work on. And when I left one of my previous businesses, I finally had a lot of time on my hands and decided, okay, either you're going to get started writing now or you're never going to get started writing. And so at that point, I started reading craft books. I started watching a lot of WriterTube on YouTube as far as how to get started there, and just kind of started learning the whole process and what makes a good story, and then just started writing. Started with a couple of short stories and then did NaNoWriMo, which was how I was able to write the first draft of my first novel. And yeah, everything just kind of went from there.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. And that book ended up doing quite well with a starred review on Kirkus, comparing it to Stephen King, which both of those are excellent things to have.
Yeah, I was so happy when that review came in. And then eventually they also included that book in their 100 greatest indie books of the year. So that was fantastic to be included in that. And it went on to win the Hoffer Award for Best Commercial Fiction, which, again, just more than I could have expected from my first book in all areas.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not exactly sure of the timeline. I know that I have been following Shortwave Press or Shortwave Books for a while. How did your writing lead to starting an indie press?
Sure. So I self-published my first two short stories just on Amazon as 99-cent Kindle books. I wanted to get my work out there and just kind of test the waters. And I was so new to the writing community that I didn't know the typical path of write a bunch of short stories and submit them to magazines and anthologies and collect thousands of rejections. And like, I didn't know that was the path. And so I was just like, oh, well, you write a short story and, no one reads blogs anymore, so I'm not going to publish it to my website. I guess I'll throw it on Kindle for 99 cents. And I thought that was the path. And that did okay. Sold pretty well, was reviewed very well on Goodreads and things like that. But they were just short stories. They were, 3,000 word stories. So then it came time for Face the Night, which is the book we were mentioning a minute ago. It was time for me to do something with that. And so I knew that I could go the agent route, and spend a couple years there and then possibly get a book deal and spend a couple years there and then have the book come out without me having control over the cover, without me having control over how it was released. And that just, I'm used to doing things myself. I always have. I've been a DIY person since high school when I released my own literary magazine, when the high school decided they weren't going to publish me and my friends. So that spirit's always been there. And so I was like, well, I can't trust anyone else to do it right, but I can trust myself. So I launched Shortwave initially as just like my own vanity press. It was like, okay, I'm just going to release my books. I need a title or a company name to do that with. And so I started Shortwave to do that. But because Face the Night did so well, not only in the reviews and awards, but sales wise, most indie books don't sell more than 100 200 copies in their lifetime, and I sold 1,500 copies of Face the Night in the first year. So my thought process was, well, if I can do that for myself, somebody who has no author following, somebody who has no platform in the book community, imagine what I could do for other writers. And so that led to me wanting to expand Shortwave to publish other folks as well. I had a knack for graphic design. I had a knack for layout. These are things that I went to school for. These are things that I had been doing freelance on and off throughout my life. So I knew I could make good looking books. And it just so happened at the same time I was thinking about all of this, one of my friends posted on her newsletter that she had started writing a cozy mystery series, but wasn't sure what she was going to do with it. I always really enjoyed her writing, so I asked her if I could just take a look at the book. She sent it over, and it was fantastic. And so we talked, and that became the first book deal that Shortwave signed was for her cozy mystery line, which doesn't really align with how Shortwave is viewed today. We're kind of like really into the horror today. But when I started, it was more like, sci-fi, mystery, thriller. My book is technically listed as a horror book, but it's a supernatural thriller for the most part. There are a couple of like a bit more horror scenes in it, but the overall tone is more like supernatural thriller. And so we just kind of gradually became a horror press, which, don't get me wrong, I'm very happy about. I have loved horror since I was a little kid, been watching Freddy since I was 6 years old, absolutely love it. I would like to push this a little bit more into sci-fi, but we'll get into that in the publishing section of all of this. But that was how Shortwave kind of came about, was that I needed a place for my stuff to live, and I didn't really trust the process outside of my own hands. I was just too worried that it was either going to take 5 years for the book to come out, or that would have a horrible cover, or they would only want to release it as an ebook and no print. But there were too many question marks for me. I understand that path is the right path for a lot of people, because you need a lot of skills to be able to go the self-publishing route. You need to know how to find a good editor. You need to know layout. You need to know marketing. You need to know art. You need to be of the mindset of somebody who can take all those elements and put them together and hit a timeline. Like, those are all very difficult things to do when you're not used to doing them. But again, because they were so successful for me, I was like, well, I can take this and apply this to other people's books as well. And so far it's going pretty great. So
yeah, well, I think that, yes, it has been going pretty great. One of the things I know, you're pretty open about sort of the financial end of running a press, which I feel gets a lot of small presses in trouble eventually not being upfront about that. So how did you you'd mentioned a business that allowed you to sort of finance. How did that all come about?
Sure. So back in 2008, I was on YouTube. I was making YouTube videos regularly. I was in the top 100 most subscribed for a very small amount of time in 2008. Back when it only took 40,000 subscribers to be there. Now it would take 40 million subscribers to be there, but they were just getting started. And we noticed, I noticed that a lot of my friends were uploading original music to YouTube. They were performing on their guitars or in their bedrooms, things like that. And all the comments were, where can I buy this? Where can I buy this? And the answer was nowhere. So I started talking about a record label for YouTubers with one of my friends, Hank Green. He had a popular YouTube channel, Vlog Brothers, still has a popular YouTube channel, Vlog Brothers, with his brother John.
Little known,
Yeah.
the Hank brothers. I don't, the Green brothers. I mean,
Yes.
I don't.
So we decided, because he was getting ready to release some music, we decided to start a record label for YouTubers. And that record label took off very quickly. YouTube let us take over the front page of their website for an entire day and feature nothing but our
Wow.
bands. They wrote blog posts about us because we were kind of the first company to do that for YouTubers. Like there were other merch companies back then, but none that were specifically like, hey, let's take popular YouTubers and like get their shirts out and their posters and their plushies and things like that. And we started doing those things. So we expanded beyond music very quickly, got into t-shirts, got into posters, all kinds of stuff. And that business started literally in my bedroom. There was a box of CDs at the foot of my bed in 2008. By 2014, we had a warehouse in a different state with a full team of employees. And it had grown so much that it had grown beyond what I could manage on a daily basis. And so at that point, I sold my stake in the company back to John and Hank. And at that point was able to spend a couple of years deciding what I wanted to do next. And that's when the writing thing kind of, came about of like, hey, I have this incredible privilege of having the time to focus on this and not have to juggle a full-time job at the same time as writing and trying to scratch out a couple of words in a half hour while taking care of my kid. Like I see so many writers who have to squeeze it in for every second that they can, and I didn't have to do that. So I was like, okay, I want to use this time. I want to use utilize this time to actually do something, and that's where the book and Shortwave came from. But all of that came from DFTBA Records, the record label I started with Hank and John, and just how successful that had become. Like I said, it was so surreal going from literal box in the bedroom to 4,000 square feet warehouse and a dozen employees and everything else. Like it's kind of one of those American dreams come true kind of thing, because I was not wealthy. We had to borrow the money to start the business, and thankfully earned out that loan in the first like 5 months, which is just insane. Most companies
That's
take
incredible.
years to get to profitability. But yeah, so it was a pretty instant success. And so that has allowed me to run Shortwave at a loss, which almost every press does.
Yeah.
Most small
Mhm.
presses, indie presses, they are hobbies. And I don't say that in the negative way. I just say that is they release, 2, 3 books a year because that's all the time and money they have to release each year.
Mhm.
And there are a few, obviously, that go bigger. And a lot of times that is how the press folds in 2 or 3 years because it takes a
Yeah.
lot of money to keep that going. Because I have been so public about it, I don't mind sharing with your audience. So last year, we brought in about $95,000 in book sales, but we spent $99,000 to get there. So we
Right.
operated at about a $4,000 to $5,000 loss last year. And that just goes into this last year. We made a lot of investments in future titles. We had the next 2 years completely booked
Mhm.
and ready to go. That was a lot of investments in we're moving from more novellas to novels, and editing is done on a per word basis. So when your average book goes from 30,000 words to 90,000 words, suddenly every book you're releasing costs 3 times more to edit and costs 3 times
Yep.
more to proof and costs 3 times more to print. And so while we still might be releasing the same number of titles, those are all now much more expensive titles to release than what we were releasing a year or two ago. Uh,
Yeah.
so the hope is that we can continue to grow the income side and maybe temper the expenses side a little bit, especially because we have pre-planned out the next 2 years now. That was a large investment in 1 year. And obviously we'll continue signing books for the future, but those will come in a little bit slower. We really hit the ground running last year, and I was like, okay, we need to build something if we're going to build something, and that's how the big investment came about.
Yeah. I mean, I know from the reader side, just watching the different titles come out and the VHS series, which has been wildly successful.
Yes.
Um, and a ton of fun to read also, by the way. If anyone just likes mayhem in their horror, that's definitely a good place to start. But Shortwave doesn't, you didn't just limit yourself, which after talking to you makes complete sense since you have so many different interests and a history in those interests. But you have also branched out into, you've done a film that you did a Kickstarter for, if I remember right.
For the
Um,
post-production, yeah.
Quarterly subscription boxes that you also did a Kickstarter for. So,
Yes.
how did those projects come about?
Um, sure. Well, the quarterly book box, I saw a lot of other presses running subscription programs. But they were always so expensive because the publisher was sending out the books as they were released. So you're sending out 10, 12, 13 packages a year, which is very costly. Postage costs about the same as it costs us to print the books themselves. So
Wow.
yeah, most paperback books cost about $6 to print, and postage to send them out is $6. So that was a huge factor in cost for doing something like that. And so what I decided to do was instead to release our subscription quarterly was sending out the books in advance for that quarter. So, we have like Q2 has 5 books coming out, but we can put
Hmm.
all 5 books in one box and send them for basically the same price as one book. It's slightly more, but only a couple bucks. But that then saves us the shipping on 4 other
Right.
titles, which we can
Hmm.
then turn around and make our subscription much more reasonable. Our subscription price was $2.95 for 12 different books, 2 of which were hardcovers, which are much more expensive to print, which I think is just a fantastic deal compared to if you had bought them individually, shipped them individually, all that kind of stuff. It did save folks a lot of money for readers. They get the books early, which is fantastic. They get first dibs on any kind of bonus items that come with the book. So signed book plates or pamphlets or zines or anything else that we might do as bonus items. Those all go first to our subscribers. Um, and it worked out really well for us because we don't have to send out 13 packages every year. We only have to send out 4. So that was kind of a demand thing of just people asking, hey, when are you going to get a subscription? I want all of these. When are you going to get a subscription? Because a lot of other presses had been doing it. So it's definitely not something we invented, although I will take a little bit of credit for inventing the quarterly mailings instead of doing it on a per book basis. And I have noticed a couple other presses this year with their subscriptions are planning to do the same. So
Oh,
because the
nice.
cost savings they're just too big to ignore. Um, yeah, and then the film stuff is a little wild. So um, I went. I had this teacher in college that I connected with pretty immediately, and her and I stayed in contact after college and throughout our careers and stuff. And one of her friends was starting a small production company for films, indie films. He's this guy who's been doing a film podcast for over a decade. He ran a film review website, and he was like, I want to make a horror film. And so he made a horror film, and they were looking for investors. And so she was like, hey, I just want to let you know about this opportunity. I took a look at it. I was like, this sounds great. I want in. So I invested in their first film, and that film went really well. And after that, they were like, well, we want to make something else, but let's do something a little bit smaller. And so they said, Alan, you have any short stories you want to make into a film? And so I sent a couple, including my first ever short story, The Fort. And he loved The Fort immediately. He was like, I can see this as a film. So he was out there casting before we had even, signed anything. But it was great how fast it went. And so that was something where I really wanted to be involved on the creativity side. Like I had a history on YouTube of making videos. I have a band, so we've made some music. So I knew that we could do like a good soundtrack for it, that kind of stuff. And so I bought in. I was the biggest investor in that film, even though I didn't have to be. It was like they had bought the story, they could go, they could make it, but I wanted to be hands on, and so I was the largest investor in that project and got to help produce, got to help edit, got to help with the soundtrack, the casting, everything. I got to be involved in all of it, which I know most writers don't get to do. But I paid for that seat, and I enjoyed doing all of that, and so yeah, that went really well. We had the main star was Callie Haverda, who's from Netflix's That 90s Show. Her co-star was Armani Jackson, who's been in Wolfpack on Paramount, and he was just on a voice on Terminator Zero on Netflix. So working with real talent, we found a great location out in the woods of Kentucky and went and recorded there for a week. And yeah, it all came together really well. That film's won, I mean, it's a short film, but it's won a number of awards at this point, been nominated for 10 in total, I think. We put out the Blu-ray. So the Kickstarter was to put out the Blu-ray and a couple of other like bonus items. We did a little
Yeah, a Lego set, I
Lego
think.
set, yeah, of the characters and stuff. So yeah, that was a really fun project. It lost a ton of money because that's just what short films do. We all kind of knew that going in, that
Mhm.
it's like, okay, this is going to be more of a showcase piece for the talent, for the writing, for everyone involved. The director got a showcase piece out of it. The talent got a showcase piece. I got a showcase piece, but it was a lot of fun to do. And since then, I've invested in a couple of other their projects, more feature films versus short films. But yeah, I was just so lucky that the timing worked out so well. And it was all because I stayed in contact with, a college teacher I had 20 years ago, so
Yeah, that's pretty incredible.
it was a lot of fun, that journey. Yeah.
Do you plan on doing more films?
I would love to if I can afford to. It's really going to come down to the right opportunity and what we think it's going to cost. Like I said, I'm invested in a number of their other films that haven't been released yet. So if those are profitable, then great, fantastic. I've got my money back and we can go ahead and make another film. But yeah, it's just the short film alone cost about 150,000 and the feature films are getting close to 1 million. So they are really big investments. It's so as much as I would love to do it, it's got to be the right story. It's got to be the right time. It has to have all of the elements there to work. And so I guess the short answer is yes, I would love to. The long answer is, but I don't know.
Maybe.
So,
Right. Yeah. So, we have a lot of authors listening, and I think, you carry such a unique perspective, having been both from the writing and the publishing side. But as a publisher, what is the one thing that you look for in a manuscript that would turn something from a no to a yes?
This is a tough question. I actually got asked this the other day. I was in a writing workshop class that they had brought me in for a Q&A at the end, and they were asking a lot about like queries and how to like stand out. And I know there's so many tips and tricks online, but for me, I've found that really it really comes down to the story, and it has to be something that I get excited about. And that's a terrible answer because you don't know what's going to get me excited, and if
Right.
you're submitting to somebody else, you don't know what's going to get them excited. But unfortunately, like after seeing hundreds of submissions from books, like it is much easier to take a look at a manuscript from an author who has a gigantic following because you know that you're pretty safe that, okay, you're probably going to earn out on that book. It's probably going to be profitable. But is that the book you want to spend your time working on? And that's what it comes down to for me, And so like Shortwave, we do a lot of big author titles. We worked with Clay McLeod Chapman. We work with Nat Cassidy. We're working with Philip Fracassi this year, Todd Kiesling. We got Gemma Files coming out later this year. Next year, Gemma Moore. So we're working with a lot of those big authors, but we also publish a lot of debuts because the stories just got me excited. We have a debut novella coming out later this year, The Extra. That's going to be the first in a book of 3. We've already signed the contract for all 3 books. And this is with a brand new author. She has no books out yet, but it was one of those stories where I got the pitch, and from the pitch alone, I didn't even need to open the manuscript. From the pitch alone, I was like, okay, I'm 90% on board already. As long as you don't write like a toddler, I'm buying this book because the idea is so incredible. And thankfully, Annie doesn't write like a toddler because the writing is just as strong as the pitch was. And that it just got me so excited, got me so ramped up. And, just personally, I think that's probably the book I'm most excited about this year. Not that I'm not excited about the other books, obviously. Spend a lot of time and money working on them, but everyone has their personal faves. And I think that's the one that I'm really hoping succeeds this year. That's the one that I'm really hoping that even though she's a brand new author, I'm hoping that people give the book a chance and fall in love with it as much as I did. So to get back to your question, sorry, I got way off track there. But to get back to your question, obviously having a following helps, but it's not everything. And I think it really does just come down to, do you have a strong story? Are you looking at, maybe a plot that's been out there a few times, but you're looking at it in a new way, or you have a new character, and so you're seeing the whole thing through new eyes, that kind of stuff. And again, I know it's a terrible answer that your listeners are probably going to hate. They're probably looking for that. Just include this one line and I'll for sure open your doc, kind of thing. But I don't think that exists. As much as people like to put it on Twitter for interaction, I don't think that most agents are looking at things like, most editors are looking at things like that and saying, oh, they included that one line, so I'll open their manuscript. So yeah.
Yeah, I know there is no easy answer, but I don't know. I kind of like that answer. I like to think, it's you want someone who is as excited as you are for that book, for that idea to be your champion. So I get it.
Yeah, and I can see it's maybe a little different going with the big 5 because they kind of have machines in place. Or mechanisms in place to kind of promote books better than we do. But for me, I can't work on a book that I'm not excited about, even if it's a big name author. If they come to me, we've had to turn down some big name authors, some people I would love to work with, and I hope that they submit something else. But I took a look at those manuscripts and I was just like, this doesn't work for me. I'm not excited about this, and because as we alluded to earlier, we're not profitable yet. So I really am working for free at this point. Every hour I put in last year, and this is my full-time gig right now, which is how we were able to bring in $100,000 in book sales. But when you're spending $100,000 to get there, that means you're working for free. And so if I'm going to be working for free, I need to be really excited about what I'm working on, or it immediately becomes a chore and something I don't want to do. And so, yeah, it really does just boil down to the perfect story for that editor, and that's going to be different for everyone that you submit to.
Yeah. Well, so for anyone listening, Alan mentioned sci-fi. If you've got some interesting takes on some
There you go.
sci-fi, maybe. So what do you think is the biggest misconception people have from both the writing side and the publisher side that you've encountered that you think might help?
From the publishing side, I would say I don't think that most people realize just how low indie book sales are. Even when you have a successful indie book, our most successful indie book, right, or our most successful book, is Rest Stop from Nat Cassidy, and that sold just over 9,000 copies ish right
So
now,
creepy.
which is fantastic for a small press like us. But in the grand scheme of things, that is nothing. And that's depressing a little bit, because and the big thing that really stands in the way is just we can't yet get books on bookstore shelves. You can walk into Barnes and Noble and you can request the book, but if you're there and you don't know the book exists, you're a buyer that or you're a reader that will never reach, because we don't yet have distribution, which means we can't get on bookstore shelves because they just won't order from us. They don't want to deal with a million little publishers. They want to deal with 10 big distributors. We had a distribution deal in place that was supposed to kick in now, but 2 weeks after signing that contract, the distributor filed for bankruptcy.
Oh,
And so
no.
even though they wanted to keep our deal in place, I pulled out of the deal because if you can't pay, they owe Pokemon like $500,000, 500 million. I don't remember which it was. It was a
Wow.
500 something that they owe. So if they're not paying them, they certainly aren't going to get around to paying Shortwave. And
Right.
so I didn't feel comfortable moving forward with that. But unfortunately, that is why I made all those investments last year, because we had a distribution deal in place and I knew that we were going to be able to get books into bookstores. So suddenly we'd be selling 3 to 5 times more copies of every title than we did previously because people could just walk in and pick it up. So that was quite the setback at the end of last year. And it has really affected the finances because again, I expected that all these books that I was shelling out more than I have ever shelled out for before, that we would have a mechanism in place to sell more of those, and we no longer have that. So, if you're out there listening, please go buy a Shortwave book. um,
They are very
and
good, I can say from a reader's perspective. I have read quite a few of them.
Thank you. Um, yeah, and so it is one of those things where now it's just back to starting over at the first step of getting another distributor. There are more out there. This isn't our only chance. But it is something where it's like, okay, you spent months getting that first deal and it was a ton of work and then it fell away. And it's like, okay, I need a minute to mourn before I can get back out there and do that all over again. It's months of work. And I don't have the time right now. We're releasing 15 books this year, releasing 13 books next year so far. Like, that's a lot of, when you basically have to do everything for a book in roughly a month on average because you're releasing a book every month. Now, obviously, it's spread out over many months in the background, and we're working on multiple titles at a time. But basically, you have a month to get each book done, and that's it. And that's a lot when you're talking revisions back and forth with the author. When you're talking, hey, do you like this draft of the cover art? No, okay, let me change it. Like, there's a lot of that time going back and forth, and a lot of that effort, whether it's creative energy, mental energy, or physical energy, because we also, we have a direct bookstore. So we pack all of our orders here. Like I have packing tables behind me. I've got all of our stock over to the side there. And so when an order comes in, okay, get up, go pack the box, tape it up, print out the label, so it's physical work as much as it is mental and creative. And it's just exhausting sometimes, especially when you turn around and see your paycheck as $0. It's I see now how easy it is to be defeated in this industry. And if I didn't come from the successful previous business and know what it could become, because the early days of DFTBA were the same way as they are for Shortwave. It was
Yeah.
like, oh, we brought in $3,000 this month. Great. But we spent $4,000 on, manufacturing and shipping and whatever else. Thankfully for that company, it quickly turned around, and this company is going a little bit slower. But, back then we were working in area where people had really dedicated audiences. They were tuning in and watching their videos every single week or every single day, even for some people were daily vloggers. With authors, and the way that social media has gone over the last year or two, it's really broken down a lot of those connections. Look at how many people dominated on Twitter and could post a book cover reveal and get, thousands of interactions on that. And now it's a ghost town. No one wants to be on Twitter. No one wants to be exposed to that every hour of every day. And the replacements just haven't caught up yet. Blue Sky is great, but the interaction isn't completely there yet. Instagram is getting better, but it still doesn't replace, what you had on Twitter. You can't put links in anything unless you're doing a story that disappears right away. Like it's just so frustrating that these things are so difficult. And especially for indie presses, I actually mentioned this the other day. Maybe it was in the Discord, so it wasn't public, but for indie presses, everything at every step is more expensive than it is for the big five. Because we print smaller print runs, our books cost us more. Because we don't have special deals with FedEx and UPS, every book costs us more to ship. We don't get as much promotion as the big five does because obviously Publishers Weekly wants to talk about the new big five book. They don't want to talk about the new book coming out of your bedroom. So, it just makes it harder at every step to kind of get there. I can now see why it's so easy for people to kind of call it quits after 2-3 years. Not that I'm there yet, but to be honest, some days it gets close. Some days it's like, wait, why am I doing this again? Why am I volunteering 10 hours of my time today for other people's work? Don't I have my own work I could work on? That kind of stuff. So
I get it. Yeah.
Sorry, that turned a little downer. Let's get back to something
that's
more
all
fun.
right. Business is tough, but let's end on a happy note. We like to always close out the show with what's one piece of advice you would give to newer aspiring writers?
Read a lot more than you think you have to. I
That's
see
good
so
advice.
many. I know that's advice that is given often, but I still see a lot of writers who are like, I don't have time to read. I haven't read anything new in the last 2 years. Like, what do you mean? Like, how do you can't keep your craft current? You can't expose yourself to new ideas. You can't, these things you need to take in as much as you put out. I believe anyway. And so, yeah, anytime that I have a new project that comes up, what are 5 books that are similar to this project? What can inspire me? What can I see what came before, kind of thing to hopefully drive me to making my new my new project even better than it would have been without those inputs.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. Well, thank you so much for your time, and for the work that you do towards Shortwave. I know that the authors appreciate it. I know that readers have been really enjoying it, and yeah, I hope that it continues to have more success.
Thank you. This was fun. Thanks.
Okay. Well, this was a really interesting story. I just admire his courage to start a YouTube CD business in his house with investments and is just doing it all out of his bedroom, essentially, shipping CDs. And
Yeah. I thought
And
it
Like
was,
that old school drop ship business,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. But it is interesting, like how he kind of took like, oh, I learned how to do this
Yeah,
there, and
yeah,
then
yeah,
applied it to took a detour, wrote, and then applied it to a completely different business. Um,
yeah.
that's really interesting. What skills do you think you have that if you wanted to like, I I guess not be a publisher. I don't, what other things could you do? Book publicity? Kevin, you could be a book
I'm
publicist.
yeah, I could do that. I mean, the stuff that I do now is basically I just transformed the stuff I was doing in previous careers, like
Yeah.
podcasting. I used to work in radio, YouTube. I used to work in TV, I did marketing. So I think there's a lot of transferable skills in the publishing world, really.
Yeah.
I
And
think
if
it's
you
more of a
could get the,
mindset, right? Like it's
Yeah.
yeah.
like, I mean, somebody could hand me a plastic cup and say you need to make a living selling these plastic cups, starting tomorrow, and I'd find a way to do it. So
Yeah.
it's,
Right. Yeah. And if
you
you
know,
can get the Green brothers to be
yeah.
on board, that's
Yeah.
Okay.
also up.
Can I
Big
tell
help.
you, like, I felt like such an idiot. I didn't know that Hank Green did anything except write novels. I had
Oh,
no
really? Yeah. You
idea.
didn't know about Vlogbrothers?
No.
That's been around
He
forever.
he
Yeah.
got the Presidential Medal of Honor or Medal of
Yeah.
Freedom, one of those things for his because he's got like a huge like education channel on YouTube. Like he
Yeah.
teaches science to the
I obviously don't watch enough YouTube because I don't know who all these people who do stuff on. I have no idea who they are. It's like when he was like, "Oh yeah, like Hank Green did the Vlogbrothers," I'm like, "Oh, I thought he was just a novelist."
John Green, I think, was the novelist
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
His brother, I don't remember how Hank Green started. I know we're gonna hijack with the Green brothers, but I don't remember if he got started like as a teacher. But anyway, he started with the YouTube, and so they kind of had that. And then at some point, Hank wrote a couple books, and
Yeah.
here we are.
Yeah.
And now it's just greens all the way down. And if you
Right.
got
Yep,
that joke,
I did.
then you're probably
Yeah.
a reader.
But it
And
was just
yeah, and now Alan has taken the things that he learned from there. And yeah, Shortwave is actually, I'm really impressed with what they've done with their business. I know Christine and I were talking about like the names that
Yeah.
he's
yeah.
bringing in the horror space, and he's doing like Nat Cassidy, I think his last book had like, I might be completely wrong about this, but like something like 2,000 reviews on Goodreads for a novella, which is pretty impressive,
Hmm.
I think.
Yeah.
Maybe I should look that up.
Yeah, but I mean, it was pretty cool, right? Because he did that and then sold the business to the Green brothers. And then it's like, I have a couple years to figure out what I want to do.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be
Yeah.
nice? Just have the luxury of
1,000.
being like, I have a few years, I'm gonna figure out what I actually
Yeah.
want to do.
4,000 reviews on Good.
4,000 reviews. That's pretty darn good. But yeah, so
Yeah.
then he started this business and he's just a problem solver, right? And he sees
Yeah.
things like, oh, look at all these YouTubers making music. They don't have CDs. I'll do that. And
Yeah.
then he's like, oh, look at how expensive this shipping is for book subscriptions. I'll just bundle 5 books that are coming out that quarter and send them all at the
Yeah.
same
Oh,
time.
the book box is brilliant. Like
Brilliant.
everyone in, because that has lived for a long time in the YA and the fan, we got Fairy Loot and Illumicrate and, other places dabble with it. Book of the Month is a
Yeah.
little bit different, but yeah, he just sort of took that and was like, let's do it for horror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me. So like now we have an upcoming interview and it's several weeks out, but with David Virgutz, and he created Scare Mail.
Yeah.
And it's basically like he writes this story and sends it out kind of, it's almost like a letter from a serial killer, but like so it's the same kind of thing, but it's based on his work, right? It's his solo project. He's not doing it for someone else, whatever. But it kind of reminds me of that in a way, in that, he took this idea he had, but he also had these resources and these skills or whatever, and he created a kind of cottage business around it. Like I kind of admire that from an entrepreneurial standpoint. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I
I
think
thought like what Alan did was super cool. And like now
Yeah, yeah.
other book subscriptions are emulating what he's done because he's
yeah,
like, look at, I saved a bajillion dollars on shipping and I can do
right.
my boxes cheaper.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it gets his books into the hands of readers, and then
Yeah.
it gets people talking about it. And then he also he started that on a Kickstarter that was quite successful, and then also funded, I think that they made one of his short stories into a film, I think. The
Yes,
Lego
they did.
set.
They made a short story into a film, which, short films are always difficult sells, but it's good publicity for that
Yeah.
story. And I just want a Lego set. Can we talk
Oh,
about Lego
yes.
sets for his stories? I
How do
want a
you
Lego set for my story.
how do you create custom Lego sets?
I don't know, but I want to look into it.
Kevin, this might actually be really good because the archaeological, element,
It's a good
I don't know,
point.
like a temple, like that would be really cool.
It's a good point.
JD, I
Yeah.
want a
I
Lego
bet that would
set.
appeal to the Minecraft kids. I could get those Minecraft kids reading my stuff.
There you go.
You
One
never
of my
know.
daughters-
Yeah.
One of my daughter's favorite things to get, they've got fossil kits. Like it's basically a chunk
yeah.
of plaster, and you have to chip away the plaster, and you find like a shark tooth or a bone
Mhm.
or something like that in the middle of it. Like I could see somebody doing that with an archaeological thriller. I mean, all these guys are basically finding a void in the industry, right?
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
somehow able to spot that one little opening that nobody's doing. And a lot of it is it's cyclical. Like if you go back to the 70s and 80s, like book clubs were huge.
Right.
Just like CD clubs where they had the exact same model. You get a book for a penny, and then you pick 8 more, and then make a commitment to buy 3 over the next couple of years, and they would just send you one title a month. And
Mhm.
you could
Yeah.
either send it back or you could keep it. Pretty much everybody kept it because it was easier than sending it back.
Correct.
Yeah. I think I'm still on the hook for like at least one of those books. I think I still owe them.
But like that's how I filled my CD rack, and like that's gone now. And all of a sudden he's spotting that, and he's finding new ways to put CDs out there in front of people. The book
Yeah.
boxes are the same thing. I mean, it's basically just the 2.0 version of what was happening back in the day.
Yeah.
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 I
Yeah.
like that it's like it's expanding the creative element of writing too, because
Yeah.
it's not just, authors may not necessarily just be looking at like how many interviews going to do and talk about this book and do that, but like it's sort of taking the idea of merch and going beyond that, like interactive merch.
Exactly. I still want a Lego set. JD, one of your books needs a Lego set, and I want it.
Well, that honestly, like that's something I would keep. Like I was at this conference, and like I've got a box of bookmarks. Like everybody handed me a bookmark, or they hand me a pen, and it's like
Yeah.
always the same stuff over and over.
Right.
Goes
Yeah.
right into the cyclical file when I get home. Like you don't
Yeah.
keep any of that.
So
If somebody
okay.
handed me
A little Lego
yes,
set, that would be
yeah.
Oh
awesome.
yeah, that'd be
couple
awesome.
Legos. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would
So-
work. So.
Kara goes to these conferences and events and things that are all put on by like home builders and stuff because she's in real estate. And she comes home with swag that I'm like, holy crap. I mean, like battery packs for your phone and like, a whole bunch of stuff that's got to cost. Yeah, I don't know how much they're spending on this stuff, but any given item like would just kill at an author conference. It's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
it's unreal, man. I'm in the wrong industry.
That's why it's kind of interesting that he was able to do that through the Kickstarter. And I think Kickstarter is kind of like Kickstarter feels like it like had a big rush and then it kind of died, and now it's like
It's
coming
rushing
back again.
Yeah.
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 So we want a Wood Island, haunted
Yeah.
house Lego
There you
set
go.
Yeah.
with
JD.
stuff in the basement.
Well, if
I
you
want
think
it.
about it,
If
you could
couldn't
do
get us
that.
that fancy package or the writer, you can get us a haunted Lego set.
Yeah.
So it just needs to be a really basic, tiny little thing, right? Like, a
Yeah.
little figurine and like a little kit, right?
Yeah.
But if you could do it in such a way that like if people followed you book to book, they could actually build like some big mega
Yeah.
project, right?
Oh,
Like those
The whole
little
Lego
like,
village.
Santas
That
Yeah.
would be so cool.
get like in a Happy Meal. Yeah. like-
Yeah.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
a
We're gonna
good
make this
idea.
A lot of coordination, but that, I mean, I remember when authors were going out of their way to try to create, covers for their books that lined up into one image, along the spines. Like if you're willing to
Those
put that
are
much
cool.
effort into it, you'd probably be willing to do this Lego thing.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I'm looking into this as soon as we hang up, is what I'm saying.
All right. Report
I
back.
can't wait.
I will be bugging you in 2 days, so I don't have to do the research myself.
Excellent. Okay, that was a fun one. JD, who is up next week?
Well, speaking of Nat Cassidy, next week we've got Nat Cassidy.
Woo.
Nat's an American novelist, actor, playwright, musician based out of New York City. His latest novel is called When the Wolf Comes Home and releases April 22nd. That should be fun.
Sounds great. If you'd like to be notified as soon as new episodes published, make sure you go to writersincpodcast.com and sign up now. We'll see you next episode and have a great week of writing.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Writers Inc. Access the show notes and leave a comment at writersincpodcast.com.